First-person shooters. There's no question that this is the most popular gaming genre this generation. A genre that, while it's existed for almost 2 decades, as far as I know, has exploded into the franchise we see today. However, one of the things I've been asking myself lately is how one particular shooter became as popular as it did, and I am of course talking about Call of Duty. Now, despite my dislike for this gaming genre, I'd be a fool to say that Call of Duty isn't a successful game. But what really made it successful? I've heard and read different reasons, but it's always the same reasons: casual or fanboy. The word fanboy doesn't describe why people like this game so much as it describes why people don't like the fact that others like this game. No one has to be a fanboy of Call of Duty to like it more than whatever other shooter. That isn't to say that the game doesn't have a fanboy group, but to base its whole success on fanboyism, that's too easy. And you know me by now. I like to make things complicated, because complicated makes you use your brain. Easy makes you feel better. Same with the word casual. Do casuals play it? Of course, but so do the hardcore. So as far as I'm concerned, those two words have no use in Call of Duty's success, and if we're going to really try and find out what made Call of Duty successful, easy words like casual and fanboy won't get you the answer you're looking for. So then what's the answer? For me, this is a very difficult question to answer since my knowledge of shooters isn't really that great. And I'd rather not look at random websites that state things than use that as fact, since we've seen people do that before and we know how that can make you look, especially when the info you read is 100% wrong. So I have to try and do this with what basic little shooter knowledge I have. If you had to answer the question, what made Call of Duty successful, without using fanboy or casual, what would you say? I can't give you guys the real answer to this since I'm not too sure what people really like about shooters. They're not bad games, though I do think we're flooded with them, but I just can't get into them the same way others do. I have an assumption of what made Call of Duty successful, but my answer is full of holes that my lack of shooter knowledge can't fill. Maybe you guys can. Now before I tell you guys what my assumption is, let me explain how I came to it. And to do this, I need to go back one generation. The best place to start is probably the place where the FPS genre really exploded: Halo. Yes, I'm aware of games like Half-Life and Counter-Strike, but when one shooter's enough to save a console, and majority of the people who bought that console did for that game, I think it's safe to say the explosion started with that particular game. And with this, I think it's fair to say that Call of Duty didn't start the shooter craze, Halo did. Especially when, Halo came out first. So at this point, Halo's the top dog in shooters. 2 years pass. At this point, Halo's still seen as the top shooter and for a lot of people the best game ever made. Of course, that's all opinion. But here's where we're introduced to Call of Duty. And it seems that with the popularity Halo had at the time, there was no way this game was going to take Halo's place as the top shooter or even make shooters themselves the top gaming genre for that gaming generation. But was it Halo's popularity alone that prevented Call of Duty from taking over? Or was the first Call of Duty simply missing something? Or was Call of Duty at this time just another random game on the market that some people played but most didn't really care for? The first question for you guys is, what prevented the first Call of Duty from doing what Halo did? Either way, Halo was still king. 1 year passes and a sequel to the top-selling shooter is released. Now, Call of Duty is really in trouble, or at least more trouble than it was already in. It was already overshadowed by the first Halo, but with the release of a Halo sequel, and not only that, but I'm also sure once people heard the words Halo 2, Call of Duty 1 didn't even matter anymore. So when it came to being the top shooter, Call of Duty was a failure. Not a failure as a game, just as the top shooter. Trying to be the top shooter in a generation where shooters weren't the main genre made Activision's job quite difficult, it seems. And Halo still held the crown. Another year passes, and the second Call of Duty is released. However, with the exception of Halo and Halo 2, shooters at this point still hadn't really taken over. And with the release of the second Call of Duty, it seems like once again, not many people really cared compared to Halo 2. Halo was still the talk of the town, which means at this point Activision hadn't really worked their magic, so to say. Call of Duty 2 wasn't capable of taking the crown from Halo. 1 month passes. Things get a little interesting. The next console generation arrives with the release of the Xbox 360, and of course with the release of a new Xbox had to come a new Halo. However, it wasn't time for it yet. We skip ahead another year. This time only 1 year has passed since the last Call of Duty was released, so this is where Activision's pattern of releasing a new Call of Duty every year begins. Still, the most talked about games were Halo and Halo 2. And with everyone knowing Halo 3 was on the way, it didn't seem so much like Call of Duty 3 didn't stand a chance, it just didn't really get a chance in taking over the new 7th gaming generation that shooters were quickly building their way up to. Activision still hadn't taken that spot, and Halo seemed to still be the top shooter. 10 days later, the PlayStation 3 is released in North America. To me, this could have been the moment Call of Duty got popular, but it wasn't. The reason I say that is because since Sony didn't have any real popular launch titles on its release, This could have easily been Activision's opportunity to stand out. Even if people didn't care for Call of Duty 3 on the 360, they could have on the PS3 since the PS3 didn't have Halo. So what prevented Call of Duty 3 from taking over on the PlayStation 3? Was it possibly because at this point I've been wrong and shooters didn't take over yet? Or was it because while Sony didn't have Halo 3, it did have its own Halo, so to say, that everyone was waiting for? 2 days later, the Nintendo Wii is now released in North America. Just like the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, Call of Duty 3 was also available for the Nintendo Wii. Yet just like the Xbox 360 and PS3, Nintendo also had its own games that its main fanbase were looking forward to. So it seems at this point poor Call of Duty 3 didn't get a chance because either its competition was too strong or shooters still weren't the main genre yet. About a year passes, and the highly anticipated Halo 3 is finally released. As far as the Xbox 360 goes, Call of Duty 3 is in more trouble, and all the talk is now with Halo 3. At this point, it almost seemed like Call of Duty had no chance in taking Halo's spot. Until November 5th, 2007. A little over a month later, we are introduced to Modern Warfare. It's yet another Call of Duty released 1 year after its prequel, but this time something's different. The same game that's been overshadowed 3 times by Halo suddenly is no longer being overshadowed by Halo. In fact, it looks like more people are slowly starting to lean towards this game. Even on the PS3 side, people seem to be very intrigued by this game. But why? I remember hearing a lot of positive things said about this game, and even today a lot of people consider this game to be the best one made. Now things are a little different, and 2 things happen that I find interesting. One, despite it being yet another Call of Duty game released only a year later, it actually managed to pull some of the Halo fanbase away and bring them to Call of Duty despite Halo 3 coming out only a little over a month beforehand. 2, it managed to pull in what most people now call the casual gamer. So the question now is, how the hell did Activision, or rather Infinity Ward, do it? If Call of Duty, as a lot of people would say, has been pretty much the same crap over and over, then why was Modern Warfare able to take over the shooter generation instead of just being seen as just another Call of Duty? You can't have 3 Call of Duties that a lot of people didn't care about, then all of a sudden have the success of the 4th one be due to casuals or fanboys, especially when not all Call of Duty fans are casuals or fanboys. Did Infinity Ward figure something out about shooter fans that allowed them to have an edge over what features and gameplay style to put into the 4th Call of Duty to make it successful? Or did they just get plain lucky? And even if they did get lucky, something had to change in the franchise to allow them to take the top spot in the shooter genre with Modern Warfare that they couldn't do with the first 3 Call of Duties. The way I see it, Call of Duty's success didn't come from casuals or fanboys, it came from Modern Warfare. And I don't remember hearing people complain about Call of Duty being for casuals or fanboys with the release of Modern Warfare. People loved it, but now it's suddenly casual and fanboys? There's gotta be more to it than that. Despite new features or anything like that that may have been added to Modern Warfare to make it a big success, I think there's one other important thing. Well, actually, 2 other things that help not only Modern Warfare but every Call of Duty after. 1, competition with the wrong franchise, and 2, multiplat. I believe one of the main things that helped Call of Duty continue to succeed after Modern Warfare was the fact that companies, in my honest opinion, were trying to compete with the wrong games. Most of you remember when Killzone 2 was the talk of the town and was supposed to be the Halo 3 killer. The problem was there was no way Killzone 2 could be the Halo killer because Call of Duty had already done that. And when I say Halo killer, I simply mean taking its spot as the top first-person shooter. Instead of Killzone 2 trying to be the Halo killer, it should have been trying to be the Call of Duty World at War killer. If Killzone 2 was able to take the top spot from World at War, chances are Modern Warfare 2 wouldn't have been as successful. Now a lot of you might say, yeah Archimedes, that's the difference. Killzone 2 was supposed to be Sony's answer to Halo 3. Microsoft had their main shooter, Sony wanted one as well. And you know what? That might have been the problem. You see guys, when Killzone 3 was released, or hell when the demo was released, everyone was saying Killzone 3 would be the Call of Duty Black Ops killer. Why did they say that? Why weren't they saying it was going to be the Halo Reach killer? Simple. As I just said, Halo was no longer the top dog. And it seems that people know that now, but when Killzone 2 was released, people still thought Halo 3 was the top dog when Modern Warfare and World at War were already dominating. It's almost like it took a lot of people up to Black Ops before they said to themselves, this Call of Duty thing has exploded, which my response to that is, no, it exploded 3 Call of Duties ago. So is it safe for me to say that while a lot of people were saying Killzone 3 would be a Black Ops killer, Guerrilla Games just wasn't going for that? I think it's possible that while everyone was calling Killzone 3 the Black Ops killer, Guerrilla Games may have truly wanted it to be the Halo Reach killer. And if that's true, then I think they were once again competing with the wrong game. But in their defense, I'll admit it won't be easy for an exclusive shooter to take over the throne from a multiplat shooter. In fact, I think at this point it may be damn near impossible. I think if anything's gonna beat Call of Duty at this point, it's gotta be a multiplat. Ah yes, a multiplat. So this is supposed to be the next game to try and take Call of Duty down. And who knows, maybe it will. But if it does, I can almost guarantee it won't be because of its graphics. I see two different ways of Call of Duty being taken over. Either people are going to have to get bored of what Call of Duty offers, or Battlefield 3 will have to offer the same thing Call of Duty offers but better. And graphics alone won't be enough for this. So what makes people believe that Battlefield 3 will beat Modern Warfare 3? Is it because they believe that Battlefield 3 will bring in a new shooting experience not seen before that will add new gameplay elements never done before in a shooter? Or is it because they're simply sick of Call of Duty being at the top and want something else to take over? Speaking of multiplat, could that have actually played a big part in the success of Call of Duty? What if Call of Duty was exclusive to the Xbox 360 and Halo 3 went multiplat this generation? Would Call of Duty still be the top shooter? Only way to answer that is to ask yet another question. If Call of Duty didn't exist, what game would be the top shooter right now? Would it be Halo Reach? Would Killzone 3 have taken over? MAG maybe? SOCOM 4? Battlefield 2? Crysis 2? Or would it be whatever shooter resembles Call of Duty the most? Or better yet, would shooters still be the main genre this generation had Modern Warfare either failed or not yet existed? Yeah, I know I'm reaching with that one. But I see so many different possibilities for the direction the shooter genre could have taken had Call of Duty not taken over. I know a lot of people see Call of Duty as the same thing every year, but if it took Activision 4 Call of Duties to finally get it right, so to say, then changing the game would be the dumbest thing they could do. From what I can see, they found a formula here, and they're gonna make damn sure to stick with that formula. Call of Duty did something very dangerous to the shooter genre. It set the norm. And as a lot of you know, once something becomes the norm, it's very difficult for something different to come along and take over without following the norm rules, and even then it's still not guaranteed. And since Call of Duty's playstyle seems to be about as norm as you can get, how will all of those other shooters that have those extra features and better graphics beat Call of Duty? So my answer to what made Call of Duty successful is this. The success of Call of Duty had to have come from Modern Warfare. However, I don't actually know what was so different between the first 3 Call of Duties and the 4th. Only someone who's played them all can answer that. Were the first 3 Call of Duties hardcore, then the 4th's gameplay was changed and made it easier so anyone could play it? Is that how it got its reputation of casual? Casuals alone can't be the reason for Call of Duty's success, because if the first 3 Call of Duties were hardcore, why did it take 4 for the game to take over as the main shooter? If the first 3 Call of Duties were casual, then what brought the hardcore audience to the 4th one? When I normally hear people talk about which Call of Duty was the best, I always hear Call of Duty Modern Warfare as their favorite. Whatever Activision did to have the success they have now and the fan base they have now, they did it here and made sure to continue doing it. Guys, I know it's somewhat hypocritical of me to say that fanboyism and casuals aren't the real reason behind Call of Duty's success, then turn around and say, I don't know the actual reason. But I honestly believe that a lot of its success had to come from other things. Of course, fanboyism and casuals can play a part in it, but I don't think the start of its success and its success today is because of that. There are just too many different possibilities. To me, if you played one shooter, you've played them all. And I'll admit that's a pretty ignorant way for me to think of it. When I look at these two games, I see the same thing, but some of you can easily in full detail say exactly what splits these games apart. And that knowledge alone can easily answer why this game put Call of Duty at the top of the shooter franchise and why it has remained at the top since.